Please tell me this is a dream. Zephyr's eyes flew open. Silk sheets. Unfamiliar room. And lying next to her, calm, tattooed, watching her like he'd been waiting, was Sung-ki, Seoul's most feared mafia boss. It's not, he said. Then she remembered. The gunshots. The chaos. The photograph her camera captured that just signed her death warrant. Welcome to Ebony and Pearl Stories. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss our next incredible tale. Trust me, you'll want to be here for what happens next. Let's dive in. Zephyr Calloway had never been the kind of woman who drew attention. She preferred it that way. Quiet, invisible, moving through the world like a shadow with a camera. Seoul had been her dream destination for years, and when the scholarship program accepted her application, she'd packed her bags with trembling hands and a heart full of hope she didn't quite trust. Photography was her escape. Behind the lens, she didn't have to worry about saying the wrong thing or taking up too much space. She could just exist, capture light, frame beauty, disappear into the art. But on this stormy Friday night, disappearing wasn't an option. The rain came down in sheets, turning Seoul's neon-lit streets into rivers of color. Electric blues bleeding into hot pinks, gold reflections shimmering on slick pavement. Zephyr had stayed out too late photographing the night markets, captivated by the way lantern light danced off rain-soaked umbrellas. Now she was paying for it. Her camera bag slapped against her hip as she sprinted toward the only hotel lobby still glowing with light. Her curls, completely destroyed by humidity, clung to her cheeks in wild spirals. Water soaked through her jacket, her jeans, her sneakers. She wasn't watching where she was going. And that's when it happened. She collided, hard, with what felt like a brick wall. Except brick walls didn't have heartbeats. Zephyr stumbled backward, gasping, her hands flying up instinctively. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I wasn't looking, I didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. The man she'd crashed into didn't move. Didn't flinch. Didn't even blink. He was tall, impossibly tall, with black hair slicked back from the rain and a face that could have been carved from stone. Unreadable. Dressed in a simple black shirt and slacks that somehow looked more expensive than anything she'd ever owned. But it was his eyes that stopped her mid-apology. Dark. Piercing. The kind of gaze that didn't just look at you, it looked through you, cataloging every detail, every fear, every secret you thought you'd buried. And then she noticed the tattoos. Black ink wound up his forearm, intricate, beautiful, dangerous, disappearing beneath his rolled sleeve like a promise of something she didn't understand. I really didn't mean to, she stammered again, taking another step back. Sung-ki tilted his head slightly, studying her the way someone might study an unexpected puzzle piece that had just fallen into their lap. He didn't speak, didn't smile, didn't frown, just watched. The silence stretched between them like a living thing, and Zephyr felt her pulse hammering in her throat. Something about this man made the air feel heavier, charged with a tension she couldn't name. She opened her mouth to apologize again. And then the world exploded. Crack, crack, crack. Gunshots shattered the night behind them. Zephyr's scream tore from her chest before she could stop it. Sung-ki, someone shouted from the shadows. The man in front of her, Sung-ki, moved with terrifying speed. His hand shot out, gripping her arm and yanking her behind him in one fluid motion. Men in dark suits materialized from nowhere, forming a barrier of bodies around them. More gunshots. Shouting. The screech of tires on wet pavement. Zephyr's brain couldn't process it. Couldn't make sense of the chaos erupting around her like a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. Her knees buckled. The slippery pavement rushed up to meet her. And then, strong arms caught her mid-fall. Sung-ki's voice, low and steady, cut through the chaos. Get her out of here. Zephyr's vision blurred. She tried to speak, tried to ask what was happening, tried to understand why the world was spinning and why this stranger's arms felt like the only solid thing left in existence. But darkness swallowed her whole before she could form the words. The last thing she heard was the steady rhythm of his heartbeat against her ear. And then, nothing. If you believe innocent people shouldn't be dragged into violence they didn't ask for, hit that subscribe button right now. Comment what time you're watching this, because only the people who turn a blind eye to injustice will scroll past without engaging. Don't be that person. The throbbing arrived before awareness did. Zephyr's consciousness clawed upward through thick fog, every thought sluggish and scrambled. Her body ached with a confusion she couldn't name. Not pain exactly, but the ghost of adrenaline that had burned through her system and left exhaustion in its wake. Strange sensations flooded her senses all at once. A steady heartbeat, deep, rhythmic, not hers, pulsing somewhere close. The scent of clean cotton sheets. Sandalwood. An unfamiliar cologne that whispered expensive and dangerous in equal measure. And warmth. Solid, living warmth beneath her cheek. Her eyes flew open. Luxurious ceiling. Soft golden light filtering through floor-to-ceiling windows. Silk sheets the color of midnight tangled around her legs. This wasn't her tiny scholarship apartment. This wasn't anywhere she recognized. And then she felt it, the gentle rise and fall of breathing that wasn't her own. Zephyr's head turned slowly, her heart climbing into her throat. Sung-ki lay beside her, fully awake, completely calm, watching her with that same unreadable expression from the night before, except now in the soft morning light, he looked almost peaceful. Dangerously so. His arm rested near her waist, not quite touching but close enough that she could feel the residual warmth. "Please tell me this is a dream," Zephyr whispered, clutching the blanket to her chest like a shield. He blinked once. Slowly. "It's not," he said, his voice low and steady. Her soul nearly evacuated her body. What happened? Why am I here? Why are you here? Why are we?" She cut herself off, yanking the blanket higher until it covered her up to her chin. Her eyes darted around the room, panic rising with every second. Oh my God. Oh my God. This can't be real. This is. Sung-ki sat up with quiet composure, the kind of controlled movement that suggested he was used to waking up in tense situations. "You fainted," he said simply. "I what?" "During the attack. You collapsed." He studied her face like he was reading a book written in a language only he understood. "And someone tried to abduct you." The words hit her like ice water. "Me." Her voice cracked on the word. "Why would anyone try to abduct me? I'm nobody. I'm just a photographer on a scholarship. I don't even know anyone here. I'm still trying to determine that." He stood, revealing no panic, no urgency. Only the calculated stillness of someone who'd survived too many nights like the one before. He wore the same black shirt from last night, though it looked less pristine now. His tattoos caught the light as he moved toward the window. Zephyr's mind raced in 1,000 directions at once. Abduction. Gunshots. A mafia boss. Waking up in his bed. "This is a nightmare," she muttered, pressing her palms against her eyes. "I'm going to wake up in my apartment, and none of this will be real." "Unfortunately," Sung-ki replied without turning around, "it's very real." That's when she noticed. Her wet clothes were gone. She was wearing an oversized white t-shirt, soft, clean, definitely not hers, and her jeans had been replaced with loose cotton pants. Horror flooded her system. "Did you? Please tell me you didn't." "A female staff member changed you," he said, finally turning to face her. His expression didn't shift. "You were soaked through. Hypothermia is inconvenient." "Inconvenient?" she repeated, voice climbing an octave. "You kidnapped me and you're worried about hypothermia?" "I didn't kidnap you. I kept you alive. By bringing me to your, she gestured wildly around the penthouse. "Where even am I?" "My home." "Your home?" "Your home." Zephyr threw the blanket off and scrambled to her feet, legs shaky but functional. "I need to leave. Right now. I need to get back to my apartment. I need to call the embassy. I need to." "Sit down." It wasn't a command. It wasn't even loud. But something in his voice made her freeze mid-step. Sung-ki crossed the room with measured steps, stopping a few feet away from her, close enough to be intimidating, far enough to not be threatening. "During the attack," he said quietly, "one of them called you by name. The air left her lungs." "What?" "They called you Zephyr before they tried to grab you." She shook her head violently, curls bouncing. No, that's impossible. Nobody here knows me. I've been in Seoul 2 months. I keep to myself. I don't talk to people. I just take pictures and go home. Nobody even notices me, let alone knows my name. That, Sung-ki said, his gaze sharpening, is why it's concerning. He stepped closer, not threatening, but the kind of proximity that made her hyper-aware of how much space he occupied, how controlled every movement was, how aware he seemed of everything around him. "I need to figure out why you were targeted." Zephyr stared at him, her mind struggling to catch up. "You're saying I'm... what?" "In danger." "Yes. And you're… what? Keeping me safe? Yes. But why? His jaw tightened, barely noticeable, but she caught it. Because they'll come back. The words settled over her like a heavy blanket, suffocating and inescapable. She took a shaky breath, then another, trying to force her racing heart to slow down. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be her life. I need to leave, she said, voice trembling but determined. I need to go home. I need to. She moved toward the door. Sung Ki didn't grab her. Didn't raise his voice. He simply stepped into her path, blocking the exit with quiet authority. If you walk out now, he said, his dark eyes holding hers, you won't make it down the street. The certainty in his voice sent chills down her spine. And for the first time since waking up, Zephyr realized something terrifying. He wasn't trying to scare her. He was telling her the truth. Zephyr stood frozen in the middle of the penthouse, her heart hammering against her ribs as Sung Ki's words echoed in her head. You won't make it down the street. Who? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Who are you? For the first time since she'd met him, something shifted in Sung Ki's expression. Not quite emotion, but a flicker of acknowledgement, like he'd been waiting for this question. He moved to the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Seoul's skyline, hands sliding into his pockets with practiced ease. My name is On Sung Ki, he said quietly. Heir to the On Syndicate. The words hung in the air like smoke. Zephyr's brain scrambled to process them. Syndicate. You mean, like a business? No. He turned to face her, and the morning light cast shadows across his features that made him look both beautiful and terrifying. I mean a mafia family that controls half the underground trade routes through East Asia. The floor tilted beneath her feet. You're a criminal? That depends on who you ask. Oh my God. She pressed her hands to her temples, pacing in frantic circles. Oh my God. I crashed into a mafia boss. I literally ran into, and now I'm in his house, and people are trying to kill me, and… Her words tumbled out in a breathless rush, panic spiraling higher with every syllable. Sung Ki watched her with that same calm intensity, like he was cataloging every reaction, every gesture, every crack in her composure. You're rambling, he observed. I'm panicking, she shot back. There's a difference. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. He pulled it from his pocket, glanced at the screen, and his expression hardened, just slightly, but enough that Zephyr noticed. What? She asked, fear creeping into her voice. What is it? Sung Ki answered the call, speaking in rapid Korean, too fast for her limited vocabulary to follow. But she caught her name. Zephyr. Spoken twice. When he hung up, his gaze locked onto hers with new intensity. Your camera, he said. Where is it? My what? Why? Where is it? The sharpness in his tone made her flinch. In my bag. The staff took it when they brought me here. Sung Ki crossed the room in 3 long strides, retrieving her camera bag from a side table. He pulled out her camera with careful precision, turning it over in his hands. You were photographing the night markets yesterday, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, but I don't understand what that has to do with. You captured something you shouldn't have. Zephyr's stomach dropped. What are you talking about? Sung Ki powered on the camera, scrolling through her photos with focused efficiency. He stopped on one image, a shot she'd taken of lanterns reflecting in a puddle. Background figures blurred in the distance. He zoomed in. 2 men. Dark suits. A briefcase exchange. Faces partially visible. This, Sung Ki said, his voice deadly quiet, is evidence of a deal between rival syndicates. A transaction that, if exposed, could topple an entire criminal network. The blood drained from Zephyr's face. I wasn't trying to photograph them. I was shooting the puddle. I didn't even notice. It doesn't matter what you intended. He set the camera down, turning to face her fully. What matters is what you captured. And now they know you have it. How could they possibly know that? Because someone saw you. Someone recognized the camera. Someone put the pieces together. His jaw tightened. They assume you saw too much. They assume I'm protecting you because you have leverage. They assume you must be eliminated before you become a problem. Zephyr's legs gave out. She sank onto the edge of the couch, her whole world crumbling. This can't be happening, she whispered. I just wanted to take pictures. I just wanted to. Her voice cracked. I didn't do anything wrong. I know. Something in his tone made her look up. Sung-Ki stood a few feet away, watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not pity. Not sympathy. Something harder. More resolute. Your life changed the moment you clicked that shutter, he said quietly. Whether you meant to or not. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she blinked them back furiously. So what happens now? What? Hide here forever. You stay here until I eliminate the threat. And if I say no? Then you die. The bluntness of it stole her breath. She stared at him, this stranger who'd become her unwilling protector, this dangerous man with ink-stained arms and eyes that saw too much. Why? She asked, voice breaking. Why are you even doing this? You don't know me. I'm nobody to you. For a long moment, Sung-Ki didn't answer. Then quietly, you didn't choose this life. I won't let you die for it. The words settled between them like a vow. Zephyr opened her mouth to respond, to argue, to question, to do something, but her voice failed her. She'd spent her whole life trying to be invisible, trying not to take up space, trying to avoid being a burden. And now, the most dangerous man in Seoul was risking everything to keep her alive. You talk a lot when you're scared, Sung-Ki observed, that faint hint of amusement flickering across his face again. And you don't talk at all, she shot back, wiping at her eyes. Exactly. Despite everything, the fear, the confusion, the absolute insanity of her situation, Zephyr felt the corner of her mouth twitch. This man was impossible. Before she could say anything else, Sung-Ki's phone buzzed again. He glanced at the screen, and his entire body went rigid. What? Zephyr asked, her brief moment of calm evaporating. What is it? Sung-Ki's dark eyes met hers, and for the first time, she saw something that might have been concern. They're already in the city, he said, his voice low and controlled. My sources confirmed it. The people hunting you, they arrived this morning. Zephyr's blood turned to ice. How long do we have? Sung-Ki's expression hardened into something cold and dangerous, the look of a man who'd made his decision and wouldn't be swayed. Not long. He moved toward the door, already pulling his phone back out. They'll come again. And next time they won't miss. If you believe people shouldn't pay for crimes they didn't commit, hit subscribe and comment, justice for the innocent, right now. Only those who think she deserves what's coming will scroll past. Hours crawled by in suffocating silence. Zephyr sat curled on the penthouse couch, her camera cradled in her lap like a lifeline. Sung-Ki had disappeared into another room, making calls, coordinating security, doing whatever Mafia heirs did when death threats materialized. She couldn't stop looking at the photos. Her fingers trembled as she scrolled through the SD card, studying each image with new eyes. The lanterns she'd thought were beautiful. The reflections she'd found poetic. The background figures she'd never even noticed. There. A blurry shot taken at an angle. Two masked men beside a black sedan. One holding a briefcase. The other's jacket pushed back just enough to reveal the edge of a weapon tucked against his ribs. I didn't even see you, Zephyr whispered to the frozen image. I was just trying to capture the light. But the light had captured something far more dangerous. She pressed her palms against her eyes, fighting back the tears that threatened to spill. This wasn't supposed to be her life. She was supposed to be invisible, safe, forgotten. The penthouse lights flickered. Zephyr's head snapped up. Once, twice. Then, darkness. Complete, suffocating darkness swallowed the room whole. Her heart launched into her throat. Sung-Ki. Silence. Heavy, unnatural silence that pressed against her eardrums like cotton. Then, movement. Sung-Ki materialized from the shadows so quickly she barely saw him coming. His hand clamped over her mouth, his body forcing her down behind the marble kitchen island. Don't move, he breathed against her ear. Don't make a sound. Terror flooded her system. She nodded frantically, her camera still clutched against her chest. Sung-Ki's hand slid away from her mouth, but he stayed pressed close, shielding her with his own body as his other hand reached beneath his jacket. When he pulled out the gun, Zephyr's soul nearly left her body. Seconds stretched into eternity. Then, crash. The floor-to-ceiling window exploded inward in a shower of glass and chaos. Masked figures poured through the opening like shadows given form. Black tactical gear, weapons raised, moving with military precision. Zephyr's scream caught in her throat. Sung-Ki moved. He rose from behind the island with terrifying speed, his gun already firing. Controlled bursts, each shot deliberate and precise. His men flooded in from other entrances, engaging the intruders in a choreographed dance of violence Zephyr's mind couldn't fully process. Gunfire cracked through the air like thunder. Sunki's arm locked around her waist, dragging her backward as bullets shattered the marble countertop where she'd been crouching seconds before. "Stay behind me," he commanded, his voice steel-wrapped in ice. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think, couldn't do anything except press herself against his back and pray this nightmare would end. The firefight raged around them, controlled chaos, deadly precision, the sound of bodies hitting the floor. Then one figure broke through the defensive line. He charged straight toward them, toward her, masked face locked on Zephyr with singular focus. She froze. Every survival instinct screamed at her to run, but her legs refused to obey. The attacker raised his weapon. Sunki didn't hesitate. He intercepted the man with a speed that defied physics, slamming into him with devastating force. The gun flew from the attacker's hand. Sunki's movements became a blur, brutal, efficient, terrifying in their precision. 3 seconds. That's all it took. The attacker crumpled to the floor, unconscious before he hit the ground. Sunki spun back toward Zephyr, chest heaving, eyes wild with an intensity she'd never seen before. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. She shook her head, unable to form words. Around them, the chaos was subsiding. Sunki's men had neutralized the remaining intruders, some unconscious, others restrained, all of them no longer a threat. But the silence that followed felt more dangerous than the violence had been. Sunki's jaw clenched as he processed what had just happened. His gaze swept the shattered penthouse, the bodies on the floor, the destruction, and then returned to Zephyr. He crossed the space between them in 2 strides and dropped to one knee beside her, his hands gripping her shoulders with surprising gentleness. "They were here for you," he said quietly, his voice low and steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through both of them. "Not me. You." The words hit her like a physical blow. All this time, she'd thought she was collateral damage. An innocent bystander caught in someone else's war. But she wasn't caught in his danger. She was the danger being hunted. "I don't understand," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I'm nobody. I'm just a photographer. I'm not." "You have evidence that could destroy them," Sunki interrupted, his dark eyes boring into hers. "That makes you the most dangerous person in this city right now." Zephyr's hands trembled violently. She looked down at her camera, still somehow clutched against her chest, and felt the weight of it like an anchor dragging her under. One photograph. One accidental photograph had turned her entire world into a war zone. Sunki released her shoulders and stood, pulling his phone from his pocket. He barked orders in Korean, sharp, commanding, absolute authority in every syllable. Then he turned to his head of security, his expression carved from stone. "Seal every exit," he commanded. "Triple the perimeter. No one gets in. No one gets out." His voice dropped to something deadly and final. "And no one gets near her. Not again." The security team moved immediately, scattering to execute his orders with military efficiency. Sunki looked down at Zephyr, still crouched on the floor, surrounded by shattered glass and the aftermath of violence she'd never asked for. "You're staying here," he said. "It wasn't a request. Until I end this." And for the first time since this nightmare began, Zephyr didn't argue. Because she finally understood the truth. Walking away wasn't an option anymore. Staying alive was. The penthouse felt like a tomb. Zephyr sat on the couch, wrapped in a blanket someone had draped over her shoulders, staring at the shattered window where masked men had invaded only an hour ago. Glass crunched under the feet of security personnel sweeping the space. Medics treated minor injuries. The controlled chaos of cleanup surrounded her, but she couldn't focus on any of it. Her hands still trembled. Sunki stood across the room, speaking in low tones with his head of security. Even from a distance, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid set of his jaw. He looked like a man preparing for war. Because he was. When the security team finally dispersed, Sunki crossed the room and lowered himself into the chair across from her. Not too close. Not invading her space. Just present. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then Zephyr's voice broke the silence, small and fractured. "Why are you doing this?" Sunki's dark eyes met hers. "You already know why." "No." She shook her head, curls bouncing with the movement. "I don't. You don't know me. I'm nobody to you. You could have just let them take me. Let this be someone else's problem. But you didn't." Her voice cracked. "You're risking everything, Your safety, your people, your entire organization. For someone you met 2 days ago. Why? Sung-Ki leaned forward, elbows resting on his knees, his gaze never leaving hers. I don't protect strangers, he said quietly. But I protect people who didn't choose this life. The words hung between them like a confession. Zephyr swallowed hard. What does that mean? For the first time since she'd met him, Sung-Ki's carefully controlled mask cracked. Just slightly. Just enough. I was born into this world, he said, his voice low and steady but carrying a weight she hadn't heard before. I didn't choose the syndicate. I didn't choose the violence. I didn't choose to be feared. He paused, jaw tightening. But I learned early that this life takes everything from you. Everyone you care about becomes a target. Everyone you love becomes leverage. Zephyr's breath caught. I've lost. He stopped, the muscle in his jaw flexing. I've lost many people because of what I am. What my family is. People who didn't deserve to die. People who were only guilty of being connected to me. His gaze dropped to his hands, those same hands that had shielded her, caught her, protected her. I don't want you added to that list. The vulnerability in his voice shattered something inside her chest. This wasn't the cold mafia boss who commanded rooms with silence. This wasn't the ruthless heir who controlled half of East Asia's underground. This was a man haunted by ghosts. Trapped by legacy. Carrying the weight of every life he couldn't save. You didn't ask for this, Sung-Ki continued, looking back up at her. You were just living your life. Taking photographs. Trying to find beauty in a city that doesn't always deserve it. His expression softened. Barely, but she saw it. You shouldn't have to pay for my world's sins. Zephyr felt tears burning behind her eyes. All this time, she'd seen him as a threat. A dangerous stranger. A criminal who dragged her into chaos. But now she saw the truth. He was just as trapped as she was. Trapped by blood. By duty. By choices made long before he had the power to refuse them. You're not what I thought you were, she whispered. What did you think I was? A monster. Sung-Ki's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile but held a trace of bitter understanding. Most people do. But you're not. Zephyr pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders, holding his gaze. You're just a man who's lost too much. And doesn't want to lose anyone else. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition that someone finally saw him beneath the reputation, the fear, the carefully constructed armor. I won't let them have you, he said, and this time it sounded like a vow carved in stone. I'm taking down the syndicate that's hunting you. Every member. Every connection. Every threat. That's... Zephyr's voice faltered. That's a war. You're talking about starting a war. Yes. People will die. Yes. Because of me. Sung-Ki stood, crossing the space between them in 2 strides. He crouched in front of her, his eyes level with hers, close enough that she could see the flecks of amber in their dark depths. Not because of you, he said firmly. Because of them. Because they chose to hunt an innocent woman. Because they chose violence over reason. Because they made you a target. His jaw set with absolute certainty. I'm just making sure they regret it. Zephyr searched his face, looking for hesitation, for doubt, for anything that suggested this was bravado or performance. She found none. Only unwavering resolve. You stay here until I end this, Sung-Ki said, his voice quiet but carrying the weight of command. If you walk out, if you try to run, if you think you can disappear. He paused, letting the words settle. You won't survive. She already knew that. Had known it the moment she saw the determination in those masked attackers' eyes. But then Sung-Ki's expression shifted, just slightly, into something more vulnerable than she'd ever seen from him. I don't want to lose you. The words were barely above a whisper, but they hit her like thunder. Not a command. Not a strategy. Not calculation. Just truth. Raw and unguarded and terrifyingly honest. Zephyr's breath caught in her throat. She looked at this man who'd become her protector, her captor, her unexpected anchor in a storm she never saw coming. This man who carried death in his wake but refused to let it touch her. Okay, she whispered. Sung-Ki's eyes searched hers. Okay. I'll stay. She pulled the blanket tighter, holding his gaze. Until you end this. Until I'm safe. A pause. I trust you. Something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe, or surprise that anyone could say those words to him and mean them. He stood, offering her his hand. She took it. And as Sung-ki helped her to her feet, Zephyr caught their reflection in the shattered penthouse glass. Two silhouettes backlit by Seoul's glittering skyline. A woman who'd spent her whole life trying to be invisible. And a man who'd spent his whole life being seen as a monster. Both of them trapped in a web neither had woven. Both of them fighting to survive a world that had already decided their fates. Zephyr's gaze lingered on their reflection, and a strange realization settled over her like morning fog. Their lives were permanently intertwined now. Not by choice. Not by love. But by circumstance, survival, and something deeper she didn't have words for yet. Sung-ki released her hand, but his presence remained. Solid, protective, unwavering. Get some rest, he said quietly. Tomorrow, everything changes. Zephyr nodded, too exhausted to argue. As she turned toward the bedroom, she glanced back one last time. Sung-ki stood framed by the broken window, Seoul's lights painting him in shades of shadow and neon, looking every bit the dangerous legend the city whispered about. But she knew better now. Knew the man beneath the myth. And somehow, that made everything both more terrifying and more bearable. This was only the beginning. The storm was coming. And neither of them would walk away unchanged. If you believe people deserve second chances and that protection isn't the same as possession, subscribe now and comment, "This is just the beginning," below. Only those who think she should have been left to die will scroll past without engaging. Don't be that person. Thank you so much for joining us on this wild journey. This story is far from over. Zephyr and Sung-ki's fight for survival has only just begun. Make sure you're subscribed to Ebony and Pearl Stories so you don't miss what happens next. Comment below and let us know what you think is going to happen. Will Sung-ki be able to protect her? Will Zephyr ever be safe again? Drop your theories below, and we'll see you in the next story.